What is up, guys? Bingo here. I'm with the Duel Factory for this week's episode of X2 Drop, our Yu-Gi-Oh podcast we do every week where we try to come up with a topic when no one's actually playing the game, which is harder than it sounds. But this week we wanted to take a look back at the basics and talk about the side deck. You know, it's something that a lot of players that are trying to get in the competitive scene overlook, or a lot of the players that are trying to figure out why they aren't doing well at events need to put a lot more thought into, because it's not as simple as picking 15 cards that you think are just decent, right? There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of options. It shifts with the metagame at this current point in time, it shifts on a seemingly daily basis, but there's a lot to talk about. So
we don't do 15-1-0 theory?
No, not unless it's Highlander format.
Oh, okay, bet.
All right. So, Joe, you have significantly more competitive experience with me, than me. So, during your time in the game, how has your thought process about the side deck developed from when you first started to where you are now?
Simple, honestly. It went from being a super insignificant part of the game to me when I first started, because I just really cared about making my deck really good game one and not really thinking about games 2 and 3, because, the anime spoils you on that. But after so many years and then continually playing in different events and whatnot, you just learn that the side deck is honestly the most important part of the actual competitive mentality, period. Like, there's no other way to explain it. Like, game one always goes between, what I want to say is like statistical matchup, but like the games 2 and 3, they're one in the side deck. Like, there's no other way to put it.
Yeah, because at least half your matches, most likely more, are going to be played post-side, right? So obviously you need a strong main deck, but guaranteed half, most likely, you're going to go into game 3 most of the time. So 66% of your matches are played in the side deck. So how do you prepare going into anything from locals to a regional? Because it definitely varies to prepare your side deck. Like, what is your traditional thought process?
Well, my traditional thought process when I look at it, because Siding's actually something I've been really good at ever since I got into the game competitively. I've always had a knack for it. But one thing you have to look at is you have to see, you have to base your side deck around your deck strategy, what's its strength, what's its weaknesses, all that fun stuff. And then you have to kind of look at cards that are good against specific matchups, but also have overlaps against other matchups. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes when you get the side deck, people will have cards sided specifically for one matchup, but a lot of the good side decks, you'll see a lot of the cards have multiple overlaps with other matchups. Floodgates are one of the things that you were signing cards like there can only be one, goes in match rival with lords. Like, those types of cards, generally they have good overlap against multiple decks, depending on what you're playing. For example, Guru Control, because that's a card you would either see in the main or the side, depending on the format. But cards like that have generally good overlap is something you have to see in your side deck. And then you also have to be able to deal with other people siding against you. So, cards are usually good in the side deck, but I don't think they're very good game one, or cards like back row removal, because they're generally good against all decks and so on and so forth. And that's basically where building a strong side deck comes for that, because you have to be able to adapt it to whatever format you're playing in, whether it be a competitive format with a actual strong meta presence or a locals format. You can always build for your locals, but me personally, I would not build towards my locals. But that's another perspective, because every area that you go around, it's going to be different where you're going to play against.
Yeah, if for talking about the locals real quick, if you've been going there a while and there's always 2 invoked players, an ABC, and then some jank and meta, you're definitely going to put in some cards for those couple of decks that maybe they're not the most competitive at a regional, they're not the most represented, but for a fact that half the player base is playing invoked. Or go back a couple of months and it was 80% of the player base. But
oh yeah, for sure.
If that's what you're going to run into, obviously take some consideration from the meta, but cater towards your locals. That's why when you're looking on deck profiles online, either people don't show the side deck if it's just like one of the deck profiles not from an event, or if they do show it, they're like, this is for my locals, or if I was going to a regionals. They say that specifically because it doesn't apply to everybody's locals, and they know that.
Right. Well, one of my favorites, I'm going to share this story real quick, but one of my favorite sighting stories, and just to give you an idea of like how powerful sighting is, I don't know if you guys remember, or as whoever's listening, I don't know if any of you guys remembers, but when the Pendulum Magician Structure deck first came out, before like we got like the double iris and stuff like that, there was Dragon Pit, Dragon Pulse, Wisdom Eye, all that fun stuff. I knew everyone at my locals was going to be playing it one week. Like, it was new, people wanted to play it. It was watered down to pay, but it was the closest thing we had at the time. Just people wanted to play it. And I was playing a rogue strategy. I hate to admit this, but I was playing Speedroid at the
time. You say Speedroid?
Yeah, it was a newer deck. Terratop, it just came out. This was before they started realizing Terratop was one card, Dante, all that fun stuff. And then I decided I wanted to play, but I knew I was going to have to play against a bunch of Pendulum stuff at my local. So I literally built my side deck specifically for that one deck in mind because I knew there were going to be at least 10 or more Pendulum deck players that day. And like I said, I built my main deck, and this was my side deck. My side deck was 3 Vector Pendulum, the Draco Overlord, 3 Magical Spring, because it was really good at the time, 3 Wavering Eyes, and then we also had like 6 generic back row removal cards in the side deck. I believe it was like Twin Twisters and something else. Or no, it wasn't Twin Twister. It wasn't out at the time. So we had MST, and then I had 1 generic card. But I had a game plan set up the entire time. Games 2 and 3, I had 9 cards that I could side in generally against those decks, period. And we played 4 rounds of Split, so we had top cut. Very first 4 round, all 4 rounds that I played, all Pendulum Magician players. I lost every single game 1, without a doubt. It was just horrible. Was not a fun experience. Stuck to my game plan with my side deck. Sided those 9 cards in every time, which were the Magical Springs, the Wavering Eyes, and the Vector Pendulum, the Draco. Won all my games 2 and 3, finished 4-0 for the night. Very first person I played against was a BA player playing Spheroid, and I got bodied in top cut. But there was no chance I was winning any of those Swiss matches without those 9 cards specifically sided for that deck in mind.
Yeah, and that's just an example of building your side deck against the local the meta game, right? You wanted to play something less competitive, so you recognize you have a really bad Pendulum Magician mashup, and you wanted to build off of that. So you can argue that side decking has gotten less and less skill intensive over the past couple of years because so many more just generically strong blowout cards have been released, like Evenly Matched, Lightning Storm, things of that nature. What do you think about that, Joe?
Well, I think it's made siding a lot more easier when you have more generic blanket cards like that, because they're good against all matchups. Think about it. Some more than others, but general like blanketing cards is like what makes a side deck good. And now if you're willing to pay the money, everyone's side deck is like super good now, because like now you have to play around like multiple threats, whereas I think when siding way back, you had to side for a lot more specifics. Like I think 2014 was probably one of the better examples of what you could do for siding, because there were so many decks that you had to side for, and there weren't like a lot of like generally good blanket cards like Lightning Storm or Evenly Matched. Like I know for hat matchups, Geargia, and to an extent the fat matchups where they played the Fire Fist Ninja instead of the hands. Cards that were good blanketing for that were like Malevolent Catastrophe, Full House, and there was one other card, I can't think of it. But your access, but they were only good against those matchups, right? Whereas if you fast forward now all the way to 2020, where we have like cards like Lightning Storm and Evenly Matched, and to an extent Twin Twister, like those cards are good against all matchups, especially post games 2 and 3, because you have floodgate cards, or you have specific cards made in combos that were made specifically for certain situations, but are blown out by a board wipe. Like it's more openly available. That's why I think you see a lot more generacies and actual side decking, because now you also, and then hand traps are also infinitely more powerful. Like Nibiru the Primal Being, To an extent, Fantastical Dragon Phantasme.
And just because it's not relevant right now, like Artifact Lancia, like that card's extraordinarily powerful. You saw it for months and
Yeah,
months and months.
you just have there's so many more options because they blanket the entire like field, and it's just so much easier to actually build your side deck now, I think.
Yeah, and just looking back at the years that I've looked into Yu-Gi-Oh, right now it just seems like there's probably like there's just like 10 to 15 just generically good side deck cards that you see just over and over again, and there's a lot less niche tech options being played because cards like Dark Ruler No More and Lightning Storm Evenly are just so powerful. And that it's like you said, it's a good thing, but it's also like kind of a bad thing because there was so much thought put into, the spice card. Like, remember when Forbidden Apocrypha popped up as a spicy tech card, or Blind Obliteration at the tail end of Zoo format, I think. Like,
Yeah, and that's the thing that we're missing is like you don't see the creativity that you used to see in side decking. Like I remember, my buddy Andrew tells me that I should receive the credit for it because I was doing it before the ARG Hoban topped with it. But when Interrupted Kaiju Slumber came out, like people started like it took one person, but then they started signing like 3 Slumber and a bunch of Kaijus. Like you don't see like innovations and you don't see like creativity in the side deck for like that because it went from being something specific. We just thought it was niche for the Kaiju deck. Well, now it just turns out like, hey, this is like the ideal board wipeout. You know what I mean?
oh yeah.
Like you don't see that anymore. You don't see people randomly coming up with one of my personal favorite side cards, Wiseman's Chalice. You don't see people randomly playing cards like that, or like when Mirror the Iceberry became popular. It all started from one guy topping the YCS and the Necros Mirror because he's playing that, and people forgot about that card. Cards like Mystical Ref Panel during Dragon Ruler format for when your opponent activates Sacred Sword at 7 stars and you ref paneled them. Like, you don't see those like nuances anymore. And it's like I get it, but like it was like a prime era for Yu-Gi-Oh! I like to say.
Yeah, and obviously we're in this really kind of non-existent, fake, stagnant format. It just we didn't get any changes on the ban list, and it's just online play is just more and more of the same. And you need, in the format we're in, you need these just complete blowout cards every single tournament you enter. So we're not going to see that innovation because they are just the most effective most effective tools against what is presented. Like, there's just these insane combo decks that you have to either stop or break their board, and you're only going to do that with a handful of cards. So given the change in the metagame with adjustments from the next ban list, hopefully it will either slow down or shift a little bit so where it's less just blowout combos, because I feel like that's when the side deck shines, is when it's either a tier 0 or or a triangle format where there's just like 3 good decks, but they're not like insanely powerful, or a tier 0 deck where you can tech specifically for like 6 to 9 cards just for the mirror match. I feel like that's where side decking really just innovates consistently.
I don't know. I think we might get getting close, but I remember back when I think it was like before Zoo format where we had like a little bit more opening format. But I remember like when combo decks, like you had to get an idea of what you're playing against. And this was more game 1 versus games 2 and 3, but like it's important because it gave you information on how you want to decide. I remember like watching people do a bunch of combos, but they like instead of like making like a Jarek monster, like you take a risk and end on a Blind Dweller, and based on how they react or something like that, because it was kind of interesting too, because you could like Blind Dweller and like say your risk pays off, right? Say we're in 2015 format, you're for the sake of this, because I know you and Doug really like this deck, you're playing Satella Knights and you have a very strong feeling that your opponent's playing a Shadal deck, right? Shadal gets all their advantage by being able to fuse them free for the deck. So you might have like, instead of doing like the turn 1 where you do like Vega, Unakala, Tsukiyomi and draw a bunch of cards to get more back row, you might just go Vega, or you might just summon the Unakale and not summon an XYZ monster to prevent your opponent from Shadal fusioning for free, but then it turns out to be a Necros player. Well, now you just put yourself in a bad position because you made like a blind play, but now you have information for game 2 and 3. I think you might start seeing that as the format starts to slow down after I like to call it the combo era.
Point taken. So right now, just ignoring the metagame, if you had to pick like a couple of cards from the history that you've been playing as like really cool, like innovative tech cards that have hit the side deck, and what are they, and like why do you like that moment in Yu-Gi-Oh so much?
Are you talking like specific cards or like eras?
Like cards played during a specific time. Like me, I liked. Everyone knows I like Zoo format, and Zoo format was really weird because we just got cards like Ash Blossom that were played in the side deck, but then you would see more of the rogue decks playing cards that the Zoo mirrors weren't. And I just want to know if there's anything that sticks out in your mind, like you really liked this person playing this card, or you thought it was really cool.
I don't know if it was a specific person, but one of my favorite side deck cards of all time, and I used to love playing it every side, just because I thought it had generic overlap for like every format we were playing in, but Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer. Oh, yeah. That was like one of my all-time favorite cards to play in the side deck. And then it got, for many of you remember, it got really, really popular in Dragon Lure format, especially for like the Spellbook deck, because it was like the ideal normal summon outside of like your Blue Boy or setting up like a Judgment play. Because it basically just like prevented like your opponent from doing a bunch of stuff. Because then you just took the graveyard away from them, and then like as formats progress, like honestly, it was really good in like hat format too, if you think about it, because it was one of those cards that it could take away their cards from their graveyard that prevent them from activating like their Call of the Haunted and stuff like that, and getting the most out of that. And then it was also really like integral in like Spellbook like mirror matches, because neither player could banish from the graveyard, because it would turn your Spellbook of Fates off, and then so on and so forth. And that's probably like easily one of my favorite side deck cards of all time. Another one which has seen play throughout formats, but you don't really see it till like a player, and one person who was really known for playing this card in the side deck was Maximilian Reynolds, is seeing Fossil Dino Pachycephalo pop in and out of formats. That's another really favorite card of mine.
That was actually going to be the one I mentioned, but specifically that card, when Mech Knight Invoke was really popular, and it like first took off, that card in the mirror, if you sided that in the mirror match, you normal summoned it. There's legitimately nothing they can do. They have to find a way to normal summon Blue Sky to beat over it, and it's just hilarious. So.
Well, yeah, there was no, and it's like it's different now too, because like these are some of like my favorite side deck cards, but cards like Imperm didn't exist back then. Or now, if you're playing Sky Striker, you have like Widow Anchor and stuff like that. Like there is Forbidden Chalice, but like I'm not gonna lie to you, like back in the slower Yu-Gi-Oh, like if you like Chalice like a Kaiku the Ghost Destroyer, your hand better have gas in it, because like getting over a 20, as silly as it sounds, getting over a 2200 beater was like one of the hardest things in Yu-Gi-Oh for a little bit.
Oh yeah, and the hand traps make Floodgate monsters significantly worse than cards like Evenly Matched make. Just if you're playing a back row deck, you're going to consider playing Floodgates. But really, going into game 2, you have to expect those blowout cards like Evenly and Lightning Storm. So you need to play, if you're not main decking Judgment, you're probably going to side it for when you're going first, if you are playing a trap strategy, which is really unfortunate because it kind of takes away some of the niche trap options, because trap decks had some of the coolest game 2 sides, or when you know you're going first, they had some of the coolest side deck options, because there's just so many cool traps, but you don't want to play them because they're trap cards.
It's too generic. I think we're also a victim of modern day Yu-Gi-Oh. One thing I will think about, because I remember remember when like Dark Hole and like Heavy Storm were like super prevalent cards, or not prevalent cards, but they were super like feared cards. Is that basically what the words I'm looking for are? Or like cards like Torrential Tribute or something like that. Like you didn't want to play into it. Like for example, I remember watching people. They wouldn't have any form of protection like Starlight Road or anything like that, and they would set 4 back row and pass just to get beat by some dude being lucky to have a Heavy Storm in his hand, just watching his opponent get blown out. Like, I think modern day Yu-Gi-Oh spoiled us a little bit on that one too, because I watch people do ignorant plays all the time. and then like they'll get punished for it because they don't play like a specific way and they're not playing around Nibiru, or they waste their Omni to get on something, not thinking about it, and they get blown out by Lightning Storm and evenly matched. Like, it's weird because now we have like board wipes are more prevalent, but like people are playing like with less precaution to these cards, or like less like fear of these cards because of how like degenerate combo decks can just like rebuild everything, you know?
Oh yeah, especially Adamantipator. It is like one of the most insane combo decks we have. I don't know if it's better than Goki, but it's up there.
Nah, nothing was more scary than Goki.
Yeah, like full power Goki. I don't know if anything can beat that.
It was broken. Like broken.
So, getting past like how important it is, one thing we want to recommend is if you are investing in this game, you're relatively new, highly considering just picking up good generic side deck staples, because the game is pricey. Usually the main deck isn't the problem lately. It's the extra deck and the side deck, but having a good toolbox binder, like you want to start building your side deck binder, because Joe, if you're anything like me, you've been putting it together for years and you just refuse to get rid of anything out of there, no matter how niche it is, because you want access to it if it comes up.
Oh yeah, I've had a staple binder ever since I think I started putting my staple and side deck binder together in 2014 or tail end 2013. I started putting it together because I got tired of looking for cards. So like I got to the point where I was just going to start picking up side deck and staple cards, and then putting them in a binder, and I just take them everywhere I go with whatever deck I'm playing or anything like that, so I can adjust it for like the event I'm going to, right? But obviously mine's divulged a little bit over the years. Like now, like that binder went from being a side deck and staple binder to now it's a maxed out side deck and staple binder. So all my stuff's like fold out and stuff like that. But like I always have it no matter where I go.
Yeah, like when I'm going to events, I don't usually bring a lot of stuff, but I definitely have my side deck binder and whatever deck I'm playing before I turn in my deck list, because you never know. When you talk with your friends right before you sit down at a regional, you got an hour, you're like, all right, let's look this over one last time. Like, what are you siding and why? And maybe we talk about it. Not like I don't want to not have a card on me if it's relevant to the format.
Yeah, like what is it? I think mine's full of like nothing but like generic hand traps, floodgate monsters, board wipes, draw cards, spell and trap removal, floodgates, like anything that like could be relevant at any time or was like a side deck or main deck staple. Like I have in that binder ready to go. Or like for example, I think I was going there and here we'll use the story because I let Bless borrow cards from me all the time. He was playing and he realized that mind control is really good and have it, but I had it. It's just good, especially if like you have friends that like you loan card stuff to, and they're like really good about it. Like it's just openly available, and that's just him benefit off me just being paranoid.
Oh yeah, the whole mind control debacle.
Yep.
And then don't forget Trap Trick.
Yeah, I mean, good old fucking Trap Trick. I hate that card.
But
well, like it's a good generic one because like it pulls floodgates and it also pulls out other cards like. Another good set, like an artifact engine, that's always because you never know when that can be sided or when it can be played. Like there's a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
and like that's the point of the binder.
Right now you can see just a very, very good example of an old niche card starting to become relevant with, or not starting, it's kind of been in the meta for a while, but a Pointer of the Red Lotus, right? That card's how old?
Yeah, that card's like over a decade old, and like
Stupid old.
People are playing it because it's like one of the most ideal cards.
Yeah, you get to look at your opponent's hand and take the good card away.
Yeah,
but it's
like, you never know when...
It's a common from fucking forever ago. So
yeah, it's a long time. I can't remember when it came out, but the point being is like. People will have open if you have this binder have open access to it, then it no longer becomes a problem. That's why. I don't know if that's why, but I know like for like an example of like main decks and stuff like that, like usually with the decks tier 1 I always keep a copy of it in case I decide to play it. It's the same thing with your main deck and side deck. Not to the extreme, but you know, it's a similar concept.
Getting into the main deck, that's when you start getting into just like regular collectors. Like, but if main decks come and go. You know what you want to play, but like we were talking about earlier, side decks have just generic overlap, and there are certain cards that you just absolutely have to have access to during certain formats, or else you are at a disadvantage. Not saying you can't play without them, but if you want to play optimally, there are certain cards you can't not have.
Absolutely.
That's pretty much it for the topic at hand. We're pretty close to the time. So, Joe, you got any other talking points? We got like 3-4 minutes left.
That's one of the things, like, if you haven't done it already, just honestly, like, if you have, like, a smaller collection, especially, like, people who are just, if you have, like, a smaller collection, or if you have, like, a collection that you've been building on for, like, a year or two now, and you haven't got, like, stuff that you, like, normally carry that you would for, like, your main deck and, like, your side deck and stuff like that, just go, if you have an extra binder, just pull out the binder, go through it, and start looking at stuff that you would think would be generic overlap for other decks, and just start putting it together. And then once you have, like, an established binder and stuff like that, then you can do what I did. You can start flowing it out, which actually, honestly, I should probably quit carrying that binder because there's a lot. But,
Yeah,
like, just get something set up, you know?
If you lost that binder, there's one page in that binder that's worth over $1,000.
Well, no, what is it? The hand trap binder, the very first page of the hand. If you count the maxis and all that, there's like $2,000 in hand traps.
Oh yeah, I forget. I always forget how expensive Ulti-Maxis are right now.
Yeah, it's got like maxis, veilers, the Ulti Ogre. Like, there's a lot of money in my like main and side deck binder.
But so you don't have to do that.
You do not have to do that. Just know if I lost,
it would be a very upsetting day indeed.
Oh yeah.
So
for sure.
That's pretty much all I want to say on the topic. Just understand the importance of the side deck, and you will play more games in your post side than you do with just your main deck. So it's very, very important for competitive deck building. Understand how to properly side deck. One thing we didn't talk about is knowing how to side deck with your deck, right? So you should know how many flex spots you have in your deck post game one. Like, hey, I have a maximum of 6 spots that are non-engine pieces or non-essential cards to my strategy. I want to take these out. It's not just, okay, I lost game one. Let's just thumb through my deck real quick. What's not that important? Like, let me take out this.
Yeah, you can't do that. You have to know what's good going first. You have to know what's good going second. You have to understand. Like, there's a whole nother level of siding we could actually talk about if we could do it in some other podcasts too.
Yeah, it's like when we were really getting into regionals, I was like, okay, the night before I'd sit down, have the deck list, have the deck, and it's like, okay, if I lose game one or if I know I'm going first against this deck, I'm going to side out these 6 cards for these. And like, you can't do it on the fly. That's not the way to go. That's how you end up with sauceless French.
This is true.
But, guys, if you have enjoyed this podcast, we go up same time, same place every week. iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, 8 a.m. on all of those, 10 a.m. on YouTube. I've actually been streaming these on Twitch pretty much every time we record them. It's always Sunday night between 9 and midnight. So if you ever want to do that, check it out. But Joe, you got any last minute comments or thoughts?
I mean, the weekly routine. Douglas French has no sauce.
Piccolo, you have no sauce. No. Hey.
So thank you guys for stopping by, giving us some of your time on Monday or whenever you do watch this. And please check us out. Same time, same place. I'll see you guys back here next week.
Okay, bye.